To the top, here I go, think I'm chosen to be the king of rock, think the people have spoken. I can hear the tick-tock of the clock, I'm in motion. So now I'm gonna pop, causing all this commotion.
Hey everybody, my name is Eric Hopkins and welcome to the Fat Boy Cartel podcast. If you're finding us for the very first time, please hit that like and subscribe button. Any little bit of help you guys can give us is greatly appreciated. I apologize for it just being me tonight for the AEW Dynamite review. Everything's good with all the guys and everything like that. It's just that we did a recording earlier with Damon and Brandon alongside as well for the Dynamite show, as well as a trailer reaction. Both of them are going to be solo today with me only because after we recorded those videos, I found out due to a Windows update that my computer went through earlier today that it had inadvertently muted my microphone. So both of our videos were practically useless at that point, and there was really no point in releasing them. So I'm just going to go through the Dynamite show tonight, and I'm going to do a trailer reaction for the Forever Purge that we were going to release as well solo. I apologize for the technical difficulties. We'll get them squared away, but I didn't want to leave you guys without going over the show and the trailer reaction. So here we go. Let's get into AEW Dynamite for May 12th, 2021. We started off the show with Yugi Nagata versus Jon Moxley for the IWGP United States Championship, which was contested under New Japan rules. They built this like a big-time main event match, and Jon Moxley came out to the ring to Wild Thing. When I originally watched this, I wasn't sure if it was going to become his theme for, going forward, but then I had it pointed out to me that this was a theme that he uses in New Japan, and apparently it was a tribute to Onita, according to Wrestling Twitter tonight. So that's cool. I mean, for one night only, I thought it was really cool and it was a little different, but I just really like Jon Moxley's personal entrance music that he always uses on Dynamite. So hopefully he'll go back to that for that alone. But I understand that he uses this in New Japan, so being the fact that this is for the IWGP title, it made a lot of sense to play it here. I'm guessing this was mostly strong style in effect here. I mean, it was a very physical and hard-hitting match. Jon Moxley hit the Paradigm Shift, or the Death Rider, as it's also known in Japan, as commentary pointed out, for the win. And Moxley bowed to Nagata after the match, and Nagata's returned. He returned the favor by bowing back, a good sign of mutual respect between the two. This match was very good, in my opinion. I do feel like it kind of underwhelmed to a degree, mainly because it felt like it was really short, and as Brandon pointed out earlier on the show, it felt like the ending was kind of abrupt. So to that point, I understand, but altogether, I think this was a good match. I really wish you guys could have heard the back and forth we had tonight. I thought it was a very good show. I hate that this happened, but I'm gonna try to do my best here to give you the best show I can. So moving forward here, we had Ortiz, Guevara, and Jake Hager cut a promo with a back. Pretty good for these guys, although Brandon pointed out that he would have liked to have seen them kind of be more serious and maybe like go on a rampage, trying to find the Pinnacle to kind of, try to get back at them for what they did to Jericho. But they were cutting promos here, so I thought the promos were okay personally. But they said, or Jericho and Santana was not there. They said that the Pinnacle they had them all but beat. They had them beat in blood and guts, but a twist of fate occurred when MJF shoved Jericho off the cage. They said that MJF had Santana arrested and detained by cops for stabbing him with a fork. And Ortiz said that was all. He was lucky that's all that he did. He called it a bitch move that MJF pulled, and Jericho apparently has a dislocated elbow from his fall off the cage. When I first heard that, I was kind of like, well, that's all he had? That was wrong with him? I mean, he was supposedly supposed to have gone through concrete, right? But the steps, obviously, it wasn't shot very well, and it looked like he fell through cardboard or a bit. Obviously, it was a crash pad. But anyway, so a dislocated elbow, I guess. At least he's selling something. I'll give him that. They say they want another match with the Pinnacle, and they're going to put Pinnacle in the grave. So yeah, I mean, we'll see where they go with it. Obviously, by the end of the show, Cody Rhodes come out next and cuts a great promo. I don't actually have the words full verbatim here, but I'll break it down the best I can. He says he's not ever been not proud to be an American. He addresses Anthony Ogogo, says he's run down the United States. Yet he has a visa and makes money thanks to the United States. Says that while we may not always agree and this country has its issues, the argument makes us Americans who we are. Our empathy outweighs our anger. He says a go-go didn't come here to chase the England dream. He talks about how this country and all the opportunities it offers everyone, including those who aren't from here or of different races, and shows serious love for his wife, Brandy, and his unborn child. Long story short of it, he says that they are going to do the fighting at Double or Nothing, but it'll be the first show back at full capacity for crowds for AEW, and it will be Cody Rhodes versus Anthony Ogogo. But he won't be wrestling the American Nightmare, he says. He's going to be picking up a sword that only he and his brother have a right to pick up, and it will be Anthony Ogogo versus the American Dream, Cody Rhodes. Obviously honoring his father, the American Dream, Dusty Rhodes. Cody takes a lot of heat, but one thing I do like to point out is, and you have to admire, is that Cody is working with young talent and trying to get them over, even if he does sometimes win against the younger talent, trying to elevate these talents by putting on good matches with them, even though they sometimes suffer losses at the hands of Cody. This will be a very big test for Anthony Ogogo on a big stage, so we'll finally get our first look at him next week, as we'll get into a little bit here. But and obviously Cody has his criticisms from some fans for sure about how he constantly jumps from feud to feud to feud, and it doesn't always flow very well about why it's happening and things like that. This is one of the better ones, I think, that in that case, though, because QT turned on his Nightmare Factory, or Nightmare Family, I suppose, or whatever they call it. And so it makes some narrative sense to go this route, in my opinion. But I'm obviously the AEW guy. Like I said, I really wish you could have heard Brandon and Damon's retort to some of this stuff. And they make excellent points, and hopefully they'll return with me again next week, and we'll be able to do a better show for you. Long story. Oh, let's see. We already did that. SCU video package they chronicled their friendship going up and down the road with the Young Bucks and how the Bucks' recent actions have made SCU feel betrayed and hurt. They review how SCU promised back in December of 2020 that the next time they lose, they are done as a tag team. So a little bit of foreshadowing here on this show moving forward for the next match. SCU versus Young Bucks with Don Callis and the Good Brothers at ringside for the AEW World Tag Team Championships. The match was a great tag team match. It kind of took a turn when Nick Jackson superkicked Christopher Daniels' head into the steel post on the outside, which immediately busted Daniels open. The Young Bucks tried to take advantage of the one-man advantage against Frankie Kazarian, but Kazarian turned it around and even delivered a Styles Clash on Matt Jackson, sending a message to Doc Gallows at ringside, who tried to distract the referee. Obviously, a little bit of a WWE reference with AJ Styles and the Club. The Bucks retook the advantage. Christopher Daniels made the save from a pinfall attempt. Matt Jackson pounded away on Daniels' bloody head, but Daniels fought back. Matt Jackson then reenacted the Shawn Michaels "I'm sorry, I love you" Ric Flair superkick spot from Ric Flair's WWE retirement at WrestleMania on Christopher Daniels, because at this point ending this match would have meant the retirement of SCU. So I get what they were trying to do here as heels. They were trying to mock that spot a little bit because it involved a super kick, and that's what the Young Bucks are known for doing. I get it, but Damon and Brandon kind of thought it was not real good. They thought it was kind of a stupid spot. I understand the criticism, especially when you're pulling in WWE references. Sometimes you don't need to copy. But again, we also discussed how all companies will sometimes copy each other and redo spots that have been done in the past. So it's nothing new for professional wrestling, unfortunately, but it just does get pointed out as criticism a lot of times, especially when it's a blatant ripoff of something a company did years ago. And we'll have another one of those before the night's out here as well. Daniels fought back, but Matt Jackson sprayed Daniels with cold spray in the face and hit him on the head with the can, but SCU would still not give up despite all this. But the BTE trigger would be too much for Christopher Daniels in the end, and the Young Bucks retain their titles, and now SCU must retire. Right after this, they cut on commentary. They kept saying that something's going on in the back, and then they sent back cameras to John Moxley and Eddie Kingston. Were shown destroying the Elite's locker room. We all kind of were in agreement on the podcast that we tried to record that they probably should have held off and not cut right to the backstage segment with them destroying the locker room just yet. And they should have lingered on Kazarian and Christopher Daniels a little bit longer. This is a long time standing tag team, and they just broke up. Now, granted, to their credit, they did show that moment after the commercial break, after the Moxley Kingston segment. but I would much rather they lingered on it and shown it live as the crowd was chanting SCU, SCU, but instead they opted to go to the back here. So maybe a little bit better management could have been in the plus column here. And not only that, Eddie Kingston and John Moxley, as we pointed out as well, they destroyed a locker room. Brandon seemed to think they said, "Where are the Bucks? Where are the Bucks?" Even though they knew they were just in the ring. So that didn't make a whole lot of sense to Brandon, which I totally understand. If that's what Moxley said, I didn't catch it. But they also, even so, they destroyed an empty locker room, which, I didn't have as big of an issue with. Obviously, they were trying to find the Bucks and, destroy their property or whatever, which they really didn't destroy a whole lot of property. They were just kind of throwing stuff around. So it was just done to kind of coax the Young Bucks into challenging them later on in the night, which is what ended up happening. Christian backstage, he cut a promo talking about Taz critiquing his wrestling from last week. He says that's about as credible as Christian critiquing Taz's ability at a buffet table, which I kind of got a chuckle at. I thought it was kind of funny. Says he's got an open contract and says he'll be in the ring next week, and Taz can send any member of Team Taz against him next week if he chooses. He then decides to shift toward the Casino Battle Royale at Double or Nothing, and he claims he's going to win it and earn the title shot to cash in anytime he wants. It's kind of like the Money in the Bank stuff with WWE, but this is more of a Battle Royale instead of a ladder match. Matt Sydal walked up and said he's going to win it instead. Christian then references how last year didn't go so well for Sydal and asks if he thinks it will just fall into place, referencing obviously the Matt Sydal slip on his shooting star press attempt and his debut in AEW last year. Sydal said Christian should not get too far ahead of himself because he said he signed that open contract, and next week it'll be Matt Sydal versus Christian instead of a member of Team Taz as Christian had wanted. So we're going to get new match. Again, we kind of talked about how Christian's debut had been botched at AEW and how, they have not used him properly up to this point. But then I also made the point here too, that if fans would have, if they had thrown Christian right into the title picture with Kenny Omega right away after not earning anything, the way AEW likes to do that with their standings and whatnot, fans would have gotten absolutely aggravated. And rightfully so, I think. So I think what they're doing with Christian is slowly building him up with wins and things like that so it makes narrative sense when he challenges Moxley for the title, or Omega, I should say, when he challenges Omega for the title. I don't think Christian is going to win that belt, though. I don't even think that Omega is going to lose the belt at Double or Nothing, personally. I mean, never say never, but to me, this is just a way for Christian to get some wins. And maybe he does win the Casino Battle Royale and he gets his title shot to cash in wherever he kind of wants to or whatever. Well, I don't know if it's kind of like a cash in, but he gets a title shot at some point for sure. But, yeah, we'll see what they do with Christian. But so far, it wasn't necessarily the best debut as we've all kind of agreed upon. We got to learn to undersell and over-deliver and not oversell and under-deliver like happened here. But we'll see where they go. But I think that Christian is definitely going to be getting over younger talent as well, kind of like what Cody Rhodes is doing a little bit here, and maybe Matt Sydal. I know Matt Sydal is not necessarily a younger talent, but it's definitely a fresh matchup. So in that regard, AEW is good about giving us fresh matchups for sure, not constant rematches like some shows, unfortunately. We had a number one contenders match now, and I'm going to talk about Brian Alvarez a little bit here on the Wrestling Observer Radio. He made a very good point, in my opinion, about rankings and having matches to determine a number one contender, because if you have rankings in AEW, it's an excellent point he's making that why do you need to have a match when you already have someone who is the number one ranked contender? It's a good question to ask, and to be honest, I agree with him. And I really never thought of it that way before he said it on one of his shows recently. But I did notice something tonight in regards to this. When Pac and Orange Cassidy came out for the number one contendership match, they always show the name tag or the nameplates and stuff, and on the nameplates it usually says the record for the year. And I noticed Orange Cassidy was 8-0, and Pac is 5-0. So to me, it made a little sense that maybe they're doing this match because neither guy has ever lost a match this year. So it's about figuring out, granted they both had undefeated records, but it's about figuring out who is the number one contender based on wins, losses, or losses, most likely in this case. So it stands to reason that's why you do the match. So I just thought that was an interesting little tidbit. I thought I'd throw that in here. Orange Cassidy tried to end the match quickly with a beach break after Pac broke his glasses. We got hands in the pocket offense from Orange. Orange then pulled out a backup pair of glasses because why wouldn't he have another pair on hand, right? Pac regained the advantage and kept going for the Black Arrow, but Orange kept rolling out of the way in Orange Cassidy fashion. Then things picked up, and Orange and Pac put on a great wrestling match. Orange Cassidy landed high and tight on a sit-down powerbomb and may have smacked his head off the mat. Now, I'm going to get into what happened next here, but keep in mind, Brandon and Damon feel like this was completely scripted, and this was a way to set up the triple threat match at Double or Nothing. I feel like, though, this was a spot that it looked like Orange Cassidy legit took a hard bump and got hurt here. So bear that in mind as I read what happens here. Orange Cassidy appeared loopy and he rolled to the outside as Pac began to work the crowd to stall for time during a commercial break, which is something a lot of wrestlers do when there's an injury. They try to give that competitor some time to recover. He appeared legit hurt, obviously, and Aubrey Edwards was checking on Orange during the break on the outside. Orange rolled back into the ring and Pac put him in a headlock on the mat, again, giving him a little time to collect himself. Orange appears to have collected himself, but the doctor came to ringside and checked him again during the next commercial break, which they kind of went to kind of quickly during this match, which again is kind of suspect. Don Callis then came out to demand a winner this match because Orange wasn't doing a whole lot. This felt very impromptu and off the script, like they had to come up with it off the on the cuff here. Kenny Omega then came out and nailed Pac in the back of the head with the title as Aubrey was distracted by Don Callis. And we got a double count out due to this. If this is because of Orange being hurt, I'm okay under the circumstances with this booking. Kenny and Don cut a promo discussing how they're going to have the night off at Double or Nothing, and then Tony Schiavone interrupted Omega and said he's been informed that at Double or Nothing the world title match will be Kenny Omega versus Orange Cassidy and Pac, or Pac, however you say it. Omega was then livid about the decision and he left. Maybe this was all planned. Maybe Brandon and Damon are correct. I just know the way I saw it, it felt like one giant audible due to the fact that Orange Cassidy took the sit-down powerbomb. It looked like he slammed his head into the mat. It did not look good, in my opinion, and he kept grabbing. Now, granted, this could be a very good sell job, and maybe AEW was trying to make it look legit. That's also a very good possibility. We'll just have to wait and see what the true story is that comes out of this. I'm leaning more on the injury side of things because not only that, after the match was over and Omega walked off and you see Pac in the ring, they would not show Orange Cassidy after this segment. I'm almost 99% sure he got a legit injury here, maybe a concussion. Because he really didn't do a whole lot of offense after the fact either. So to me, it felt very much like a good save on AEW's part more than it did maybe some bad booking when it comes to kind of a WWE style of way to, neither guy loses, so they both get the title match. That does sound like WWE booking to a degree. But again, it just depends on what the full story is here. Well, I guess we'll find out. But I also mentioned too, there's going to be some fans who would criticize this, kind of like what Brandon and Damon were saying, that if this does turn out that they say Orange Cassidy was hurt, there's going to be some fans who's going to say, oh, they're only saying that now because they're getting criticism about how they booked the triple threat match. That's also possible. But I guess there's you just got to have to take them at their word when they say what happens, or just make your own assumptions here. It's going to be another thing that I kind of wonder if it's going to be a little bit controversial when it comes to AEW, and they've had some moments lately that have not been their finest moments, and I wonder if this is another one, unfortunately. I do love AEW, but they've got to tighten some of these screws for sure. The Young Bucks and the Good Brothers are mad their locker room was destroyed after this. They make fun of the new number one contenders, the Varsity Blondes, who they will face next week for the tag team titles. They then challenge Moxley and Kingston for Double or Nothing, I guess, assuming they'll have the titles by then, which, again, it's pretty predictable that the Bucks are going to beat the Varsity Blondes. Probably, Moxley and Kingston are going to get involved, obviously. So it seems that Moxley and Kingston have gotten what they wanted by trashing the Young Bucks locker room. Adam Hangman Page then did an interview with the Dark Order backstage. He said him losing was bound to happen eventually, especially since it took 3.5 guys attacking him before a match, a title shot to the back of the head, and a powerbomb to do it. He then challenged Brian Cage, who beat him, to meet him one-on-one in the ring without any help to actually earn the spot instead of basically, getting a cheap victory. So he said we could do it at Double or Nothing. He said this by using a Double or Nothing pun. To me, it's a good story. I think they're not just giving it to Brian Cage in that way. He's going to have to earn Adam Hangman Page's respect and earned the spot that he supposedly beat him for, which, obviously in the eyes of many fans, they did it in such a way where it didn't hurt Adam Hangman Page. Obviously, he's not the number one contender now, but I think that's merely because they wanted to do Orange Cassidy, at least originally, Orange Cassidy versus Omega at Double or Nothing. Maybe they changed their mind and did Pac instead, or at least added him to the match. But I feel like with the first crowd back at Double or Nothing, they wanted Orange to be in the title match to get that crowd reaction, because Orange Cassidy is very much over with the crowd. And, Pac is too, really. But that should be a great match between the three of them. But in regards to this, I think it's very well done how, they, or at least kept Adam Hangman Page strong. And they kind of do something similar to Darby Allin later in the night. It's just something that I have criticism of WWE for when, no one wins. So no one gets over because they do these DQ finishes, distractions, and, interferences and all this sort of stuff. I would much rather see a straight-up loser, but if you're going to have someone lose, you also kind of figure out a way to keep them strong if you want to keep them in top contention moving forward. I thought they did that with Adam Hangman Page and Darby Allin a little bit later on. The Pinnacle then comes out for their coronation. MJF came out with a crown on his head and said that he is now the demo god and we will now refer to him as the greatest of all time. And he'll say, we'll bow down to the Pinnacle. He said he didn't know if you mouth-breathing pores knew, but AEW is the number one ranked show on cable last week. He said the Inner Circle were down 2 men. He asked if the crowd wanted to see a rematch, but then, of course, obviously, MJF answer is no. This was basically your typical "we are the best in the world" promo segment from a heel group, which we've seen a million times in pro wrestling. Tully Blanchard then brought out some gifts as he bought all 5 of them expensive watches, which I guess Brett had said he said that they were like thousands of dollars, which, if you're going to buy expensive watches, you think you'd maybe kind of get something more expensive than that. But I guess that's part of the joke, in my opinion. They are interrupted then by a honking horn. It ended up being Ortiz, Guevara, and Hager driving what looked like an all-terrain vehicle into the arena. Would look like they were dragging some sort of like a trailer in behind it. MJF said they were done with the Inner Circle. That is when we hear Chris Jericho, exactly a week after falling off a big, Hell in a Cell type cage at Blood and Guts, is all braced up with his elbow. So at least he's selling that, but he's right back on TV that following week. I kind of felt like maybe you should keep him off television for at least a week, maybe 2, before you bring it back here. But I get it. They're wanting to set up something at Double or Nothing here, so they got a whole lot of time before the end of the month to get that match set. So I get it, but again, I'd rather he would have sold it a little more. Jericho asked if the Pinnacle will give them a rematch. MJF again said no. On top of the ATV, then, we see a fire hose with Sammy Guevara that had a little bit of the bubbly hooked up to it, and he sprayed down the Pinnacle, just kind of like the old Stone Cold Steve Austin beer truck, Kurt Angle milk truck spot back in the day in the Attitude Era. So again, AEW rips off a bit of an old classic segment that WWE has done, and they're going to get criticized for this, no doubt. I understand that. Again, it's kind of one of those things, in my opinion, like, every company rips off another company at times too. I mean, even WWE ripped off Britt Baker's role model and gave that to Bayley. But, so that's why Bayley started calling herself the role model. I mean, it happens. This is what, especially, when you're in a semi-competition, even though, it's no longer a Wednesday night war anymore. But I did find it interesting to note, though, that they set up, they used something that had been done by another company to set up something that they originally created here at AEW by doing this. MJF was angry after getting sprayed with the bubbly, and he said, fine, at Double or Nothing, they'll wrestle in a stadium stampede match, which is a match that AEW created last year during the pandemic. That was between the Inner Circle and the Elite. I thought it was a very fun match, especially with some of the Matt Hardy stuff that was going on. Now, Matt Hardy won't be in this match this time, but we'll see how they handle it this year. So I'm intrigued because I did enjoy that match last year. It was one of the best cinematic matches of the year that wrestling put on. MJF then said, though, if the Inner Circle loses the Stadium Stampede, they must break up forever. So it's, as Brandon pointed out, they just did a SCU storyline that, the loser had to break up forever, and now the Inner Circle is doing the same storyline. And my rebuttal to that was, kind of like, well, WWE does that all the time with some of their storylines from Raw and SmackDown. They'll copy the same storyline. So it's nothing new. The one thing with WWE and AEW and fans and people who, hate on the other company because they're a fan of one and not the other, to me, it's just like what you like, watch what you want to watch. Let everybody else enjoy what they like too. It's like movies. There are no two people who are going to completely agree with something a movie does. Same way with WWE and AEW or any wrestling or company or whatnot. That's the beauty of the art that we have in this world. We're all different. We're all going to see things different. There's going to be certain things that WWE does, like CGI birds coming out of Matt Riddle's feet, that I'm going to absolutely hate. But there's going to be some people who find that great and they're going to love it. It may not be, my age demographic or whatever the reason might be, but as much as I want to crap on WWE sometimes, there are people who want to crap on AEW sometimes, and I totally understand it. I've just started to learn to approach wrestling as just enjoy it, and if there's something you don't like, you move on, and you have a little fun with it. You kind of poke fun and crack jokes, and but there's no reason to get angry at somebody else or get brag about your team or your the good guys winning the ratings war or something like that. Who cares? I mean, it's not that big a deal. It's just a show, guys. Let's just enjoy it for what it is. And that's what I try to do with a lot of things. I'm a very positive guy, if you haven't noticed on our channels so far. But anyhow, I thought that, at least it did a good job, at least of setting up the match at Double or Nothing. Then we got a Britt Baker interview with JR. They recapped how Hikaru Shida was the one who broke her nose and put her out of action for 5 months, even though I thought it was a leg injury. But they sold it like it was a broken nose, and it might have been. I don't remember, to be totally honest. It's poetic that she will be facing Shida, Britt Baker said. They discussed how Shida has held the title for a year during one of the worst periods in pro wrestling, obviously, with no fans and things like that. So Shida did a good job with that. But Britt says that she is now the face of the division, the role model, and the pulse of the women's division in AEW. And she guarantees she's winning the title at Double or Nothing. I actually think Britt Baker is winning the title at Double or Nothing. There's no sense in building this up and not give her the title, kind of like what they were doing with Miro later in the evening. And there are times, we got into this conversation too about how wrestling is predictable. And yes, wrestling can be predictable, but that's not necessarily a bad thing when it comes to pro wrestling. Pro wrestling is a thing that sometimes predictable is the right move. It may not be the most exciting thing in the world, but I would much rather have a show that is booked properly and build proper storylines that may be predictable than to have something to be shocking for the sake of being shocking, and then have horrible booking on how to get there that makes absolutely no logical sense. So in that case, I think AEW does a pretty decent job a lot of times of being logical, and of course, I think NXT does a great job of it as well. Sometimes the main roster in WWE does not, but there are also times they do as well. So you got to give them credit where credit's due. They're doing a great job with the Roman Reigns, Uso stuff on SmackDown in regards to Daniel Bryan, Cesaro, and Jimmy, his return this last week too. So I mean, again, it's just one of those things that wrestling is. And that's the thing. We would all love wrestling to be a certain thing in our own heads. But if it was always the way we wanted it, it would not be the way some other people wanted it. And if you're actually looking for wrestling to be a certain way all the time that fits your desires and likes, it's just not going to happen. You might as well stop wrestling watching wrestling altogether, or watching anything altogether, because no matter what you do, no matter what it is you're interested in, something is always not going to sit well with you. And that's okay. I know in today's world, I'm not allowed to, make sense and be logical, but that's kind of the way it is. I mean, things in life are going to disappoint you, but that doesn't mean we have to have all this hatred and vitriol. I know this is kind of a lovey-dovey segment here, but I just want to say that, it's okay. Enjoy wrestling again. You can have fun with it. But anyhow, that's just my opinion on it. Then we had on commentary, they announced that there will be a Friday special edition of Dynamite on May 28th for Memorial Day weekend that will lead into Double or Nothing on Sunday. So it'll be interesting to see if they have a AEW Dynamite on Wednesday and Friday, or just on Friday, and they will most likely be going head-to-head with Friday Night SmackDown. Damon mentioned that there is some news about the NHL possibly maybe having some games on TNT. I haven't heard if that's for certain yet or not. I know Tony Khan come out and said, I believe on Busted Open, that he feels like that they're not going to be moved from TNT at all because they have a contract. But he didn't roll out the idea, I think, if the right opportunity came along. So I wonder if this is maybe AEW testing the waters on a different night. Not sure, or it could just be because they want to have a big weekend, kind of like it's like their WrestleMania show to a degree, I think. So it's either that or All In. It's one of the two. But it'll be interesting to see how AEW does that night, going head to head against SmackDown, which is pretty much WWE's best show ratings wise right now. So we'll see how that goes. Then we had Thunder Rosa versus Jasmine Allure. This was a squash match for Thunder Rosa, basically. Just a very easy victory. Commentary did do a good job at mentioning why Thunder Rosa was not the number one contender for Hikaru Shida's title. Because, again, they reiterated that even though she beat Britt Baker a few weeks back, that was a non-sanctioned match, so it did not affect the standings. So even though Rosa got the victory, Britt Baker still ranks higher than her. So again, I felt that was very logical. It's something AEW likes to do with their standings, and I applaud that, at least in this company. As Kenny Omega mentioned last week, wins and losses count for something and they matter, unlike, again, some other companies who don't feel like that's the important thing. It's about telling stories. And again, they have two different philosophies. Doesn't necessarily mean either one's right or wrong. I don't even know. I have my own personal opinions of what I prefer. But again, like I said, it does. It's just all in how you like to view things. Next week, we have a little bit of the card already announced. NWA Women's Championship match between Serena Deeb defending her title against Red Velvet. AEW World Tag Team Championships, Young Bucks will defend against the Varsity Blondes. Christian Cage versus Matt Sydal, and Anthony Ogogo will have his debut match on AEW Dynamite, at least, versus Austin Gunn. At least I don't think he's had a match yet, so he'll get to face him off against a member of Cody's Nightmare family. Then we also had a little bit of the rundown for a Double or Nothing current card as of now. Adam Hangman Page versus Brian Cage. Cody Rhodes versus Anthony Ogogo. Hikaru Shida versus Britt Baker. And Kenny Omega versus Pac and Orange Cassidy for the World Championship. Then we had Jade Cargill with Tony Schiavone backstage. They basically talking about how managers Matt Hardy, Vicky Guerrero, and now Mark Sterling, a former associate of MJF, are vying for her services. Jade Cargill says she handles her own business. And she says she's listening to the offers, but she's her own boss, and she's that bitch. So, I mean, this is okay, little promo here, but I don't know exactly where they're going with this whole storyline with the managers, but I guess we'll have to wait and see what they do. Probably after Double or Nothing. Well, maybe a little bit before. We'll see. But I don't know if Cargill is going to, go with any of these here. Next, we have the main event of the show. The TNT Championship match with Darby Allin defending his title with Sting at ringside versus Miro. Obviously, before this match, we had the video package of Darby Allin talking about his condition after falling down concrete stairs last week. Says he doesn't have time to talk or think about that right now. He drives up to his hometown. Says he likes going there to remind him about where he came from and how far he's come. He says that Miro hasn't done anything since he's been in AEW. This is basically art imitating real life here, because that's what a lot of the fans are saying about how AEW has squandered Miro to this point, much like WWE did when he was Rusev. Darby then says he doesn't buy what Miro is selling. He called him a generic son of a bitch and said when this match is over, Miro will have to admit he's one of the toughest men he's ever stepped in the ring with. Obviously, going into this match, we talked about how the fan criticisms have been right, that Miro has not been used to his full potential. He got put, and some people don't think that the arcade match that they did or whatever was very good. Also, he got stuck with Kip Sabian and was the best man in that whole wedding angle, which, again, is not the greatest angles for somebody of Miro's caliber, really. So it appears at least AEW is hopefully starting to take Miro a little more seriously. Maybe going to give him a bit of a push here with their mid-card title. And obviously, so it was good to see, Miro, what they're doing with him here. But we'll see how it plays out moving forward. The match started with Miro jumping Darby before the match. Again, they're doing this in a way to not destroy Darby, much like with the Adam Hangman Page thing. They're doing it smartly, where you're going to get a winner and a loser, not completely like, just nobody wins at a DQ. We're going to have a winner or loser here, but they do it in a way narratively to where there's a narrative reason as to why perhaps Darby fails and why Adam Hangman Page lost as well. So it keeps them strong regardless, and it builds a new person with the title picture here. Feels like they're doing the same thing there. Better than a DQ. Darby was beaten outside the ring for several minutes, and the match still wasn't started yet. But again, just kind of reiterating that point. Match finally begins after the beating. Miro immediately kicks Darby in the head, but Darby kicked out. Darby does the fighting babyface thing, and he fights back. During the break, Scorpio Sky and Ethan Page distracted Darby and attacked Sting with a chop block on the outside. Darby puts up a good fight against Miro by choking him when Miro slams him into the dash report on the barricade outside. Darby looks at Sting and fist pumps him almost to say, like, I got this, or we're going to stick together, or I don't know. It was an interesting little spot, just kind of where they were showing some respect to each other, I think. Darby build up to the finish as he hits the coffin drop, but when he landed on Miro caught him, but Darby countered into a roll-up with some near falls after that, and Miro locks in the Machka lock, kind of where he's squatting on their back, the old Iron Sheik deal. But then Miro then leaned all the way back and onto his back and pulled Darby with him, where Darby was bent backward like a pretzel. And Darby Allin never really tapped out that I saw. I might have missed it, but I don't think he did. And the ref called for the bell. Referee stoppage, which I'm guessing Darby passed out, as Miro wins the TNT Championship here. After the match, Scorpio Sky and Ethan Page returned and attempt to attack Sting again as the Dark Order cleared the way out here. And setting up, looks like Scorpio Sky and Ethan Page versus Darby and Sting, likely down the road, maybe Double or Nothing. Got to give Darby and Sting somewhere to go after the TNT title here. And then after that, the show ended with Lance Archer coming out to stare down Miro, and as they stared at each other with obviously teasing possibly a TNT title match here with Lance Archer versus Miro, possibly again Double or Nothing depending on what they decide to do here. Brandon pointed out too, Lance Archer is a kind of a guy who's kind of been going a little bit back and forth here. He was kind of a heel, then he kind of got in Sting's face a little bit with Jake the Snake Roberts, and then it's kind of like all of a sudden, I think it was Brian Cage who said, he respects Sting, but they really didn't go anywhere with the Lance Archer stuff with Sting. So admittedly, AEW might have dropped that a bit here, but it could have been because Lance Archer was focused on the TNT Championship, so that's why he was kind of confronting Sting. So now that Darby doesn't have the TNT title, perhaps Lance Archer has now continued to keep his focus on the TNT title and shift his focus now toward Miro. So we'll see what they do with this. I thought it was an okay ending to the show. I'm glad Miro is finally getting his just due here. And a lot of people on Twitter were talking about how he left WWE, because he was in the mid-card and wasn't going anywhere, only to go to AEW to hold their mid-card title. So, but again, if you want to build up Miro, you start slow, you give him the mid-card title, and hopefully by, you keep building that, and when he loses that title, maybe he then can go for the AEW World title, depending on who is holding it at that time. So again, I'm willing to give AEW the benefit of the doubt and see where they go. I know sometimes a lot of people say that about WWE, but there's been a lot of times where WWE has let us down when it comes to where they're going with their plans. Because a lot of times they don't have a plan. They're just making it up week to week. AEW tends to normally have plans planned out months in advance and weeks in advance because they always have shows lined up. And even Chris Jericho's talked about this Pinnacle thing, how they have plans lined out for months and where they want to take it. So in that regard, I can't wait to see what they do going forward with everything they've got planned coming down the line. So we'll see what they do. But yeah, obviously AEW has had their struggles the last few weeks, especially in regards to the barbed wire death match and the end of Blood and Guts, which, again, the matches were good on their own right, but the endings were not either shot well or, botched with the fireworks, pyro fiasco. So the AEW does have criticisms, and they've got to get better. They got to tighten those screws, as Bully Ray would say. I'll bust that open. But they have potential, and I know that the excuse is, they're a young company, but eventually that excuse ain't going to work anymore. It's almost been 2 years now that they've been on television, so at some point you've got to start getting this stuff right with like all the ref stuff that isn't consistent, and some of the rules are being thrown out the window in certain matches. You got to tighten up all these screws. I thought the rules and stuff were better handled tonight, but they definitely have some stuff to do when it comes to delivering on their finishes, not, letting people down on some of their announcements, like the Christian thing. So they've got some stuff they need to work on. But again, I have hope, and I enjoy the show for what it is, and I hope that they continue to improve and get better as their ratings have gotten better as well now that NXT is off the same night. So we'll see what happens. but I'm encouraged. So, but what did you guys think about AEW Dynamite tonight, or last night, I suppose, by the time you're seeing this, for May 12th, 2021? Again, I apologize tonight for not having the full crew here to review the show. Technical difficulties, and hopefully we'll have those squared away. We're still getting used to doing things here. We're still a new YouTube channel and it's still a new podcast, but thank you very much for watching. Comment down below. Let me know what you think about the show, and hit that like and subscribe button. And don't forget to hit the notification bell so you get all the notifications about when we put up new content on our channel. And until our next video, guys, take care.
Yeah, ready to go, man, lock and load. That's right. I swear to God that I can drop you, bro. Yeah, I got a shot and I ain't stopping, no. That's how I know that I'm unstoppable.